Hello, this is Basar. In this tutorial, we are going to practice how we create our custom response models with Spring Data projection. Again, we have our source code here in this GitHub repository, and this is the repository we used for the JSON Vue sample. And in my previous tutorial, I was showing how we can create our response body with JSON Vue. Now we are going to do the things on top of that implementation. We have three branches right here. JSON Vue is the one we have done in this tutorial, and the projection is the one we are going to do it now. So let's start by cloning this repository. So here running git clone. And opening this directory with Visual Studio Code. Now let's switch to the JSON Vue branch. Now let's go over the project. In the Pom Xml, we are building our application with Spring Boot 2.3.4, and we are running Java version 11. We have the dependencies of Spring Data JPA, Spring Web, and we have in-memory H2 database, and also we have this Spring Boot DevTools and the Lombok, and the others are for the test dependencies. And in our source folder, we have this user package, and we have this user entity, and basically this user entity has these fields, username, email, and we were using the JSON Vue right here. Other than the password fields, we were using JSON Vue on each of these fields. And in the user controller, we were telling what type of view we want in the response of this get endpoint. And in the main class, we were creating users so that our application would be initialized with predefined users in the database. Let's also run this application to see what was the behavior. Now our application is initialized. Let's open Postman and send a request to remember what was the output. So here we are receiving the ID, username, and email, and the password is not in the response. Now we will start our tutorial by removing the current implementation. First, we are going to remove this Vue Java. We don't need it anymore. And we will remove the JSON Vue annotations from here, the user controller, and from the user entity. So we are back to our basic implementation. Let's try this one. So when we send that request, we receive this response. Now let's create our response body with projection. Now we are going to use the projection functionality of Spring Data. And all we will do is just create an interface, user projection. So this is an interface, and in this interface we will only have the get methods for the field of user we want in our response. So we want to return only, let's say, the username and the email, and we will add these fields get methods. So we will have string get username and string get email. Now we need to update our endpoint right here in the user controller. We are returning the user object, but now we have to change it to user projection. So we have to update corresponding user service method right here. Let's open that one. This was returning user, but we need to update this one to return user projection. Now we need to return a list of user projection, and this conversion the user-to-user projection will be handled on user repository. But the existing methods for getting all the users from this user repository, like this find all or the others, all are returning the list of user or page of user. So we cannot use them. So we need to add a new method to our repository. So opening the user repository and creating a new method right here. This method is going to be returning back a list of user projection. And we are not going to create our method name based on the Spring Data query keywords because those are already occupied with the user related functionalities. So we are going to create some custom method here. Let's say it is get all users. And for this method, we are going to define our query right here. So here we are going to use the query annotation right here. And for this query, we can go with the either SQL or JPQL. Let's type both of them. So if we go with the JPQL, the query would be something like this. We will select the user instance from the user of Vue. This is basically returning all the users from the user table. And if we type the same query with SQL, it's going to be this one. It is select star from user. So we will be selecting all the things from the user table. But if we go with the native SQL query, then we have to update this query annotation with adding the value and the native query as true. So let's say we will go with this native SQL query. So our repository method is ready. And in the user service, we are going to call this one, get all users. So this is returning back the list of user projection. And this is going back to this user controller method. And in the end, we expect to receive in the response, having the user objects like this one, there is username and email. Now let's save all these changes and let's try it with Postman. So sending a request here. And here we are receiving only username and email. Now let's say this user entity has one more field. Let's say it is private string last name. So in our main method, let's add a last name for each of these users too. So we will call user set last name, and let's say last name I. And let's say in the response body, we want to show both username and last name as another variable name. Let's call it full name. So like in this user projection, instead of this get username, which was exact get method for this field, let's say we will have another get method here, and let's say this is get full name. But since there is no field in the user object like this one, there's no full name here, this will not have any value assigned to it. To set a value for it, we are going to use another annotation right here, which is this value annotation. And in this value annotation, we are going to set Spring expression. And this expression is like this in double quotes. We will add the hash, and in curly braces, we are going to concatenate the username and the last name of this user object. And the user object is provided us with the keyword target. The target is representing the user object. So we can get these targets username like this. So this user's username. And we can do things like this. We can add a space in single quotes. So there's username and space. Then we can add the target last name. So with this way, we are joining the username and the last name with a single space, and it will be shown in the response with the full name field. So let's save these changes too, and let's try it with the postman. So here we have the username and last name are joined together in this full name field. Now let's add one more scenario. Let's say these users have articles. So let's add corresponding package to it. So we will have another package here. Let's call it article. And we will have article entity here. So it's going to have a ID field. This is going to be stored in the database. So we will have ID field. And let's say it's going to have a title. There will be a title for the article and there will be content for the article. And also we will have relationship between the article and the user. So let's say there will be this article will have a owner, and that owner type is this user object. Now let's add the corresponding annotations right here. This is an entity, and for the getter and setters we use the Lombok data annotation, and this is going to be a primary key. I'm just going to copy and paste it from this user object. So we have this ID field and there is this ID generation type, and for the relationship between the article and user we set the relationship annotations. One user can have multiple articles. The relationship will be many articles can have one user, and on the user side we will define the relationship. So from user point of view, this user will have list of article. Let's say this is articles. And from user point of view, this relationship is going to be one user can have many articles, and this relationship is mapped by in the articles owner field. So basically this article will have a corresponding database table, and in that table there will be this owner column, and this owner column will be actually a foreign key for this user table. So this relationship is basically doing that. So we added article, and we are going to add article to users right here in this command line runner. So let's create article repository. And this is an interface extending JPA repository, and our entity is article and its primary key is long. And let's create articles for these users. So again we will have another stream here, int stream range closed, let's say from 1 to 3. Each user will have 3 articles. We are getting the index of j, and we will create article, new article. Let's say the article set title will be title j. Article set content j by username. So let's say the content is something like this. We will have the content 1 by user 3 or something. And we will set the user, set owner as this user object. And we will save this article to database. So we need to have the article repository in this method. And here we will run article repository, save with this article object. So with this way, when our application is initialized, there will be users in database, and each of these users will have 3 articles. So we have users, we have articles, and we are returning this user projection where we are having the user full name and email. But let's say we want to have the list of articles in this response too. So let's create our article projection. And in this article projection, we will only have the title and content. So we will have string get title and string get content. And all we will do here is just add a list of article projection get articles. So again, let's import these classes first. Now again, let's see what we are done here. These methods are actually the methods we have in the user object. So this get articles, if we check the outline, so we have this get articles, but this is list of article object. But in the projection, we have the same method name, but in this one we are asking to return list of article projection. So what will Spring Data do is, it is going to run the query in the user table. Here in this user repository, this is going to be running a query on the user table. It will be pulling the user objects. It would convert those user objects to user projection objects by the method names we have here. And when it sees the get articles is actually pointing to this article projection, it is going to be creating the article projection objects for us. Now let's save all these changes and let's try with Postman once again. So in this response, we are seeing this articles is shown as null. The problem is, in the user repository, when we have these nested projections, like we are trying to generate a projection, the user projection, and there is article projection in that user projection. So in scenarios like this, the query we have here must be JPQL. Otherwise, it's not working. So going with the JPQL and removing the native SQL query. So saving this once again. And let's try it one more time. And here we are seeing the user's email here, and the articles. The articles array has the article objects, and these objects are basically the article projection, having the content and the title. Now, we have seen how the projection is generating the response model objects for us. And there are also some extra functionalities we can do with this one. Let's say instead of showing all the articles, we can show the article count. Let's say the article count is random. So we will have a random here, random, new random, and int count is random, next integer, let's say bound to 5. So this is going to be generating a random number between 0 and 5. So let's say this is something like this. And here in the user projection, instead of getting the articles, we just want to see only the count. So the count itself is just an integer, and let's say this method is get article count. So this is not a field in the user. Again, we can use this value right here. So we will have a value, and in this value, again, we can use the target, and this target has this articles array here, the array, and this array has its own methods. So just like any regular Java object, we can run its methods here. So we can get the article array's size here. Or like here, we are having the string fields of the user object, the username or the last name. So we can run, let's say, to uppercase method of the user object. So let's save all these changes and try it again. And opening Postman and sending our request. And here we have this user 1 has 2 articles. The user 2 has 4 articles. Since the count is random for each user, we have different numbers for them. So the Spring Data JPA projection is a powerful functionality, and we can create our response model based on our actual domain model like this. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you in the next tutorials.